You were having one of those days. Maybe you were on the floor, maybe on the couch, quiet, not fully present, not crying, just not okay. Then your dog came over. No one called them. No cue you noticed. They simply appeared and settled beside you, leaned into your leg, or laid their head on your knee. Something in you changed. Most people think in that moment, "That's sweet, they can tell I'm upset." Then they move on. But what really happened, the biology behind it, the science, and thousands of years of evolution that shaped it, is something most dog owners were never taught. And once you understand it, that moment won't feel the same again. Stay until the end, because the final behavior here changes everything. Your dog didn't arrive by accident. They noticed you, precisely, specifically. Using systems so advanced researchers spent decades debating whether they were real. Today we look at 12 things dogs do when you are sad, what each behavior is, what science says about it, and what it reveals about how your dog experiences you. Some will surprise you. One may change how you see your dog forever. Let's begin. Some of what follows will feel obvious only after it is explained in detail. And a few parts may change how you interpret everyday behavior entirely. Stay present as we go through it. 1. They come to you without being called. You didn't ask. You didn't make a sound they could respond to. You were just there, quiet, distant, not okay, and they still came. Most people look at this and think they could tell. They just knew, and that part is true. What matters is how they knew. A 2018 study from the University of London placed dogs in a room with their owner and a stranger. Both people alternated between softly humming and crying. When crying occurred, dogs consistently approached the crier more often and moved toward them faster, even crossing a barrier to do so. They weren't reacting to a name. They weren't following a cue. They were responding to emotional distress, even in unfamiliar humans. And they moved toward it every time. Your dog doesn't come when you're sad just because they happen to notice you nearby. They come because they detect a specific change, stress-related body scent, shifts in vocal tone, even in silence, posture differences, and their system produces one clear response. Go, be with them, now. 2, they press their body against yours and stay. Not a passing touch, not a brief nudge. They lean in fully and hold contact. And that contact has measurable effects. Research on human-animal interaction shows that sustained physical contact with a bonded dog reduces cortisol in humans. Heart rate slows. Breathing becomes deeper. The body shifts out of stress. Not because the situation changed externally, but because a warm, living presence signals safety to the nervous system. And the dog changes too. Their physiology shifts during that same contact. This regulation works both ways. Your dog isn't pressing into you because they were trained to. They do it because something deeply biological draws them toward their bonded human when distress is present. That isn't symbolic affection. That is physical co-regulation. 2 behaviors down, 10 remain. There's also something quieter happening in this interaction that most people never notice. When a dog stays pressed against you, they're not just reacting in the moment. They are continuously adjusting. Small shifts in pressure, position, breathing rhythm. It is a live feedback loop between 2 nervous systems. If your breathing slows, there's often follows. If your posture changes, they reposition without thinking. It looks simple from the outside, but internally, it is constant microcalibration. And this is why these moments feel so grounding. Not because the dog is comforting you in a symbolic sense, but because your body is literally syncing with another calm biological system that is staying close enough to stabilize yours. 3, the chin rest. Your dog walks up and gently places their chin on your knee, or your hand, or the arm of the couch beside you, and then they stay there. Most people interpret this as simple closeness, just a quiet way of being near you. But the chin rest is more precise than proximity alone. Studies on dog behavior during human emotional states show that this exact gesture, the controlled placement of the chin on a resting surface, appears more frequently when humans are experiencing emotional distress than during neutral or positive moments. It is not a greeting. It is not play. Dogs rarely do this when you're laughing, moving, or fully relaxed. They do it when something in you is off. And while they hold it, they look up. That upward gaze during the chin rest is not incidental. The dog is monitoring you, tracking subtle shifts in your expression, changes around the eyes, tension in your face, small signals that indicate whether your state is stabilizing or declining. The chin rest is not passive contact. It is continuous assessment. They are not simply random with you. They are actively reading you moment by moment from inches away. 4. They look at you, and they sustain it. When you are sad and your dog sits beside you holding eye contact, it feels like comfort. But beneath that feeling is a well-documented biological mechanism. Sustained eye contact between dogs and their bonded humans triggers oxytocin release in both brains. This is one of the most consistently replicated findings in human-animal interaction research. And importantly, this bonding response intensifies during human emotional vulnerability. The system strengthens exactly when distress is present. Your dog does not hold your gaze as a passive act. They're not checking something and then leaving. They hold it because their attention anchors there. And during emotional distress, that anchor becomes even stronger. Studies show dogs maintain longer, more stable eye contact during human crying or withdrawal than during neutral interaction. They look at you more when you are struggling, not out of alarm, not out of uncertainty, but out of presence. Stable, uninterrupted presence for as long as it takes. And they do this without instruction, without training, without being taught that this is what you do when someone you love is hurting. They simply remain. 5. They bring you something. Your dog gets up, leaves the room, and returns with an object. A toy, a ball, sometimes something random from around the house. They place it near you, on your lap, at your feet, beside your hand. And then they stop. No barking, no insistence, no clear demand to play, just an offering. Most people interpret this as an invitation to engage, a request for attention or activity. But the pattern is different when it happens during emotional distress. The behavior becomes slower, more careful, more deliberate. The object is not presented as part of play. It is placed as a gesture of transfer. Studies on canine social behavior suggest that object-giving in bonded dogs can function as a form of affiliative exchange, a way of maintaining connection when the human is emotionally unavailable or withdrawn. They are not trying to fix your state. They're trying to remain connected to you inside it. And when you acknowledge the object, even briefly, there is often a visible change in the dog's posture, a softening, a release of tension, as if the act of being received matters more than what was given. 6. They lower their energy to match yours. This shift is subtle but consistent. When you are sad, your dog becomes quieter, slower, less reactive to stimulation. The usual spikes of excitement, movement, sound, anticipation are dampened. This is not imitation in a superficial sense. It is emotional alignment. Research in behavioral neuroscience describes this as emotional contagion, the transfer of affective state between bonded individuals. In dogs, this has been observed through changes in heart rate variability, cortisol levels, and overall arousal when exposed to human emotional cues. They are not simply observing your sadness. They are biologically adjusting to it. And the adjustment goes beyond matching mood. It creates synchrony, a shared emotional rhythm where your state and theirs begin to stabilize in parallel. Not to distract you, not to override you, but to stay with you at the same level you are in. And that, in itself, is a form of support. Seven, they lick you when you're sad. When your dog licks your hand, your arm, or your face while you're crying or visibly distressed. It often feels like simple affection, but the mechanism behind it is more specific than that. Dogs do not experience the world only visually. Their tongue and nose function as chemical sensors, picking up molecular information from the surface of your skin. During emotional distress, human sweat and skin secretions change. Cortisol levels rise, stress-related compounds become more detectable. So when your dog licks you, they're not only comforting you, they're sampling your state. And there is another layer. Crying produces a distinct chemical signature in human tears, a combination of proteins and stress-related compounds that differs from neutral moisture. Dogs can detect these changes through scent and taste, which is why their attention often shifts immediately when a human begins to cry. Before you fully register it yourself, before you even speak, they already know something has changed. The licking that follows is not random repetition of affection. It is a response tied to detection and contact at the same time, gathering information while maintaining closeness. 8. They follow you everywhere, closer than usual. On a normal day, your dog follows you because you are part of their social structure. Movement means connection. If you move, they move. But during emotional distress, that following behavior intensifies. Distances shrink. Waiting times shorten. They are less willing to stay in another room, more likely to position themselves where they can see or access you at all times. Research on attachment behavior in dogs shows that proximity seeking increases when owners display signs of stress, withdrawal, or sadness. Dogs do not simply track movement, they track emotional availability. When that availability changes, their spatial behavior changes with it. You may notice them waiting outside closed doors, repositioning when you shift rooms, or settling in places that allow constant monitoring. This is not clinginess in the casual sense. It is sustained attachment regulation, maintaining contact when emotional signals indicate you need it most. 9. They sleep pressed against you. On the days when everything feels heavy, your dog doesn't choose distance. They choose contact. They move closer when you lie down. They press their body against yours and stay there as you settle into rest. Not nearby, not at the edge of the bed, against you. This kind of physical contact during rest has measurable effects on human physiology. Studies in human-animal interaction show that sustained contact with a bonded dog during sleep or rest is associated with reduced cortisol levels and increased oxytocin activity, supporting deeper recovery states. Your body relaxes more efficiently in the presence of a stable, warm, living weight beside it. But what is often overlooked is that the dog's state changes as well. Heart rate, breathing rhythm, and sleep positioning in dogs shift in response to the proximity and calmness of their human. They are not passive heat sources. They are responsive systems adjusting in real time to the environment they are embedded in. So when they press against you, it is not a one-directional act of comfort. It is shared regulation during rest. 10. They check on you again and again. This is one of the most consistent patterns in dogs during human distress, repeated return behavior. They come to you, stay for a moment, leave, and then return again. Not once or twice, but in cycles that continue as long as the emotional state persists. Each return is slightly adjusted based on what they previously observed. If you're still distressed, they may stay longer. If your state begins to stabilize, their visits become lighter, less urgent. This creates a feedback loop between observation and behavior. Dogs are not simply staying nearby. They are actively updating their response based on continuous emotional input. Even when they appear to be resting elsewhere, their attention is not fully disengaged. Subtle cues, movement, sound, shifts in posture keep them partially oriented toward you. It is a form of intermittent monitoring that allows them to remain regulated themselves while still tracking your condition. And it continues until you begin to return to baseline. 11. They position themselves between you and the world. Most people never consciously notice this pattern, but once you see it, it becomes hard to unsee. When you are sad and you settle somewhere, the floor, the couch, the edge of the bed, your dog often does not simply lie beside you. They place themselves between you and the open space of the room, between you and the door, between you and the hallway. This positioning is not random. Studies on canine protective behavior and bonded relationships show that dogs are more likely to orient their bodies between a distressed human and potential points of approach. This occurs even in environments where no actual threat is present. They are not responding to danger in the environment. They are responding to vulnerability in you, and that changes their spatial behavior. The result is a living barrier, not aggressive, not defensive in the traditional sense, but oriented outward while maintaining awareness of you behind them. On difficult days, this positioning often becomes sustained. They remain there longer, occasionally turning back to check your state before resuming outward attention. They are holding two directions at once, you behind them, the world in front of them. 12. They stop eating normally. One of the most overlooked changes during human emotional distress is a shift in the dog's appetite. When a bonded human is experiencing prolonged sadness or stress, some dogs show reduced interest in food, delayed eating, or interrupted feeding behavior. They approach the bowl, pause, look, and sometimes walk away. This is not behavioral confusion. It is physiological response linked to emotional co-regulation. Research indicates that dogs exposed to sustained stress signals from their human, including elevated cortisol through scent and behavioral cues, may experience corresponding shifts in their own stress physiology. In some cases, this includes reduced appetite, similar to stress responses observed in other mammals. They are not choosing to avoid food for symbolic reasons. They are operating within a shared stress environment that affects their internal state. And as the human begins to recover, posture shifts, vocal tone changes, stress chemistry decreases. The dog's eating behavior often returns to normal alongside it, not separately, in parallel. Here is what all 12 of these behaviors mean when you look at them together, not as separate tricks, not as isolated moments, but as one connected system. Your dog comes to you when you're sad because they detect changes in your emotional state through multiple channels at once: scent, sound, posture, and movement, forming a continuous read of what is happening inside you. They press against you because physical contact with a bonded human produces measurable shifts in stress and safety physiology in both bodies, stabilizing the system they are part of. They rest their chin on you and watch your face because they are constantly tracking micro signals in expression that indicate change, even when you're trying not to show it. They bring objects because offering something is a primary social bonding behavior, a way of maintaining connection when words or play are not appropriate. They lower their energy because emotional states propagate between bonded individuals, creating alignment in arousal and behavior. They lick you because they're detecting chemical changes in your body while also maintaining physical contact that reinforces proximity and connection. They follow you more closely because proximity becomes more important when emotional signals indicate instability or distress. They sleep against you because shared rest increases physiological regulation and supports recovery states in both nervous systems. They check on you repeatedly because monitoring allows them to update their behavior in real time based on your changing condition. They position themselves between you and the environment because vulnerability alters spatial orientation and protective behavior in bonded animals. They alter their eating patterns because sustained stress signals can influence appetite regulation in mammals, sharing close environmental and emotional space. Taken together, these are not random, comforting gestures. They are coordinated responses within a highly adapted social species. Dogs are not passive observers of human emotion. They are embedded participants in it. And for most people, this is something they live with every day without ever being told what it actually is. Just a dog being sweet. But it is more structured than that, more responsive than that, more integrated than that. And when you recognize it, even ordinary moments start to look different. The silence, the proximity, the waiting, all of it becomes part of a system that is constantly adjusting to you. There is one final layer to all of this, and it goes deeper than behavior, deeper than training, deeper than individual experience. It is history. Your dog's ability to read and respond to human emotion is not a side effect of domestication. It is the product of a long, continuous selection process shaped by thousands of years of living alongside humans. The individuals that survived and were integrated into human life were not necessarily the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones that could understand people, the ones that could distinguish safety from threat in human behavior, the ones that could read shifts in mood, tension, and intent, the ones that responded appropriately when humans were stressed, calm, grieving, or uncertain. Those dogs were more likely to be fed, more likely to be kept close, more likely to be part of human groups. And over time, that created pressure on one trait above all others: sensitivity to human emotional signals. Your dog is the outcome of that process. Over many generations, this produced an animal that does not simply coexist with humans, but actively specializes in them. One example often studied is how dogs visually process human faces. Research has shown that dogs tend to focus differently on human facial features compared to other animals, prioritizing regions that carry emotional information. This pattern does not appear in the same way when they observe non-human species. They are tuned specifically to us. And over time spent with a single person, this tuning becomes even more refined. A dog that has lived with you for years is not responding to a human. They are responding to you, your patterns, your rhythms, your specific emotional signatures. They learn what your sadness looks like before you fully notice it yourself. They learn what your withdrawal feels like before you explain it. They learn your version of not okay, and they store it, not as memory in the human sense, but as recognition patterns built over thousands of shared interactions. So when your dog comes to you on a hard day, without being called, without being instructed, it is not an isolated act of affection. It is the result of a system that has been refined across time to do exactly that: to notice, to respond, to stay. And when you look at it through that lens, the moment becomes something larger than comfort. It becomes continuity, a line that stretches from thousands of years ago directly into your living room. And it continues every time they get up and walk toward you. Not by accident, but because that is what they are. And what makes this even more striking is how stable this system remains across individual differences. Different breeds, different environments, different lives. Yet the same core patterns persist when a bonded human is in distress. You can see it in small details: the way they pause before leaving a room, the way they reposition themselves when you shift your posture, the way their attention returns to you even after distraction. None of it is random. It is structured responsiveness shaped by long-term cohabitation with humans. And over time, this responsiveness becomes personalized. Your dog is not reacting to sadness as a general category. They are reacting to your version of sadness, the specific combination of cues that define you when something is wrong. That is why it feels so immediate, so precise, so hard to dismiss, because it is not generic behavior. It is learned recognition, refined through repetition, and continuously updated in real time.